Swimming like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank. We are coming to you virtually from Seattle and the great PNW. Now listen, if you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, this right here, it's the podcast for you, the podcast of record. This is where street smarts and book smarts collide. I'm Dan Whedon, and my co-host today is James Alberson. We'll talk with James in just a second. We are excited to have our guest today. It's Doug Peterson. Doug is founder of Getting Your Priorities Straight, something we probably all need to do. And listen, we're really excited to learn about how Doug can help us to improve our mindsets on managing our personal finances. Welcome, Doug. We will be right with you. Everyone, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. That's iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I know that James likes Spotify a lot, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and of course, we're on YouTube. You could say we are ubiquitous. We not only come to you from Seattle, but about a dozen other cities, including Atlanta, Boston, Boca Raton, Charleston, and a couple new ones in Knoxville and Columbus. Now, before we bring on Doug to learn more about him and his great practice, hello there, James. How you doing, pal?
I'm pretty good, Dan. How about yourself?
I'm good. Hey, listen, and oh, by the way, I got that wrong. It's Get Your Priorities Straight. See, I got to get my priorities straight before I put it on my teleprompter. But listen, you got to be doing really, really well here, James. You had a gold medal style performance in the Renton City Council primary yesterday, 53%. I just wanted to say, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was good news last night and helped me sleep even easier.
Yeah, well, for tonight, because it's back to work tomorrow, right?
It is back to work. There's no resting on the laurels. It's a quick breather. There's still a lot of people to talk to. I believe, as you go around to the doors, there's nothing that substitutes for a face-to-face conversation with the person that you may cast a vote for. And even if you already casted the vote, it still makes sense to meet the person and actually solidify your beliefs and maybe find out even more about them.
Well, so here's our political pitch that we're not a political podcast, but if you live in Renton, vote for James Alberson. And there you go. That's you've got the endorsement of the Shrimp Tank. How about that?
Hey, much appreciated. Maybe I can now. Now maybe I can just lay back and relax.
There you go. Hey, listen, I've been watching the Olympics. I mentioned the gold medal. You may have been too. I'm curious, and we're going to ask Doug this in just a second. I know what I would choose if I was given the genie out of the bottle, and I said, and he or she said, I'm going to make you an Olympic athlete. I know what I would do. James, what would be the Summer Olympics event that we'd find you competing in?
Without a doubt, Dan, it would be in the men's gymnastics.
Oh, really?
Guys are absolutely in just fantastic shape. And in particular, I always think of doing, the iron cross.
Oh, yeah.
The strength that it takes to stay as still as they do, and, running and flipping and jumping and all that. Yep, that would be me.
Well, see, of
course, no one will really be paying attention because they really pay attention to the women's gymnastics. But
they wouldn't be paying attention because they'd be watching me play golf. I would be out on the golf course. That would be my Olympic event, although it's about 108 degrees there on the heat index in Tokyo right now. So it's a little bit hot yesterday. But we need to welcome in our guest. Doug, I'm just going to ask you, just for kicks and giggles, what Olympic event, that genie comes out of the bottle and they say, Doug, I'm going to make you an Olympian in 2021. What event would you be in?
One of my longtime interests and passions has been sailing.
Oh.
So I would race those catamarans that do about 45 knots.
Gotcha.
And just fly on the foils. That just looks like a blast to me.
Yes,
there you go. So we got sailing, gymnastics, and golf. There we go. But Doug, we're going to talk to you today a little bit about gold, I guess, in a sense. Kind of translates into personal finances and personal wealth. you really focus your practice, which I really want to talk about, how it differentiates from what other people might be doing in personal finance. You're really trying to help people get more gold and keep more gold in their personal lives, right?
Exactly. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. And there's no income you can't outspend.
So tell us a little bit about your practice. Get priorities straight. Let's talk about that. What do you mean by that, and how might you differ from what would be considered a financial planner?
So let's start with the financial planner piece. Financial planners do just that, financial planning for retirement. They often will manage investments and sell different products like life insurance or disability. And I don't do any of those. What I focus on is helping people get really clear on what's important to them so that they've put their money toward what they believe is their highest priority and ruthlessly cut what they really don't care about, so that their money's going a lot further. And typically people can get about a 15% return just by paying attention and know where their money's going.
I would certainly agree with that. We probably waste so much money that we're totally unaware of on a regular basis. I'm curious though, how did you actually end up here, Doug? How did you end up in this position to be able to help people as you do?
Well, my last 20 years has been doing executive coaching and mentoring. And at this stage of my life, I've got 2 grandkids, and I wanted to do something that impacted people's lives more than just helping them with their business. So I looked back at my life and I thought, what's a really big problem? And being an entrepreneur for 35 years, I realized cash flow was one of the biggest stressors I've had. It often, caused issues in relationship. It's just no fun not having enough. And we've all had times of abundance and not enough. So I decided if I could really help people master their cash flow. And I've helped over the last 20 years about 20 executives that I've worked with who it was affecting their health, their business, or their marriage, or all three, really get in control of their cash flow, because our cost of living can just continue to escalate if we don't pay attention.
So Doug, it's interesting that you are talking about executives and entrepreneurs. When people hear those 2 terms, they might think of someone who is very successful in business, doing well, and then to hear you say that they might be struggling with their own personal cash flow, that seems almost like an oxymoron. Maybe not, that's not the right word, but it seems off. Why is it that people who might be very successful in running a business may not be quite as successful in running their own personal finances?
Well, there's a few answers to that, but the one I'll focus on is that people who have become very adept at making money see money as a renewable resource. They don't see it as something to manage. If I want that, I'll just go make more money. And to use an example of one of my clients, 58 years old, a national public speaker, brings in about $30,000 a month, has an overhead of $65,000 with his staff. If he had to stop work, he'd be out of business in 3 months. He has not built up reserves in both his personal and business life. And so what I work toward is getting people 6 months worth of cash for both their business and their personal. Now, I'm not talking about just sticking it in a 0.5% interest bearing account, but literally having reserves so you can weather storms. Like, what if we had a pandemic? Oh, we did.
One of those. What? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, just for whatever reason, I've always kind of had that mindset ever since I got out of college. I remember I was going out with a young lady and she asked me, "Why do you save?" And hopefully she never sees this, but it kind of threw me. And I said, well, you just don't know. A rainy day comes. And about 3 or 4 months later, I got caught up in a corporate layoff, the very first one, a year out of college. And I was okay for 3 or 4 months until I got another job, and that's when she saw the answer. So I'm curious, when you work with people, what's the most common mistake that they make, other than, hey, you make money, you spend money? Can you pinpoint one or two things that, for lack of a better phrase, may be a quick fix for people?
Well, the first quick fix is literally knowing where your money's going, because when you're aware of it, you'll make very different decisions. The other one is deciding what's important to you. We've already committed money in so many different areas. If you own a car, and as soon as you got your car, now it's a used car, over 5 years, you're probably going to spend about $150 a month on average for maintenance. You won't have much maintenance one year, then you'll have a bunch another. But we've already committed that. But people don't set aside money for that. They don't set aside money for license tabs. They often don't set aside money for insurances, maybe vacations, but a lot of them are credit cards. So when you fund what's really important to you, you can make a really easy choice of, do we want to get distracted? Or is this more important? And I'll tell you, the biggest thing it gets is it changes relationships. Instead of being an emotional, we can't, or opinion, we can't afford that, or you're spending too much, it's, well, what bucket's that going to come out of? And so it just changes everything in how you deal with money. And I've been amazed at how it brings husbands and wives together, both for their personal standpoint, and also in their businesses.
And I imagine it probably doesn't hurt as bad when you do have some sort of emergency or some maintenance, when you have an account that is your maintenance fund. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's what it was there for. So it's not a big deal, not as big a deal.
It isn't. In fact, I had, we all have our own stories. And I had a year where I had 2 teeth fall out and had 2 crowns, and they didn't cost too much. But then I had a shoulder replacement. And then our dog had to be put down. That was another $350. And then I got the shingles, and then things took a turn for the worse.
Oh,
we got bed bugs.
Oh,
Bed bugs. It was a brand new hotel we went to, and they're just hitchhikers, and they're not, it's not a matter of hygiene. It's just, if somebody brought them in, you get them. And that cost $4,200. Well, we'd already gone through our emergency fund with all the other stuff because I wasn't able to work as much. But we had vacation funds, we had yard maintenance funds, we had home maintenance funds, we had auto maintenance funds. It was very easy to pull the money out without dipping into additional savings.
so let me. Go ahead.
I did, by the way, say, well, look, if those bed bug things can keep the bed bugs out, those wrappers you put around the mattress, well, why wouldn't it keep all the dead ones in? Well, that's when I had to dip in the vacation fund, because my wife would not sleep on the old dead bug bed.
I don't blame her. So let me ask you this, because you talked about a lot of maintenance funds. Do you recommend having multiple accounts for those, or do you have one large maintenance fund?
That's a great question. There's a lot of schools of thought that we've been trained, and I don't know if you're familiar with Profit First for businesses. But in Profit First, he suggests you have a whole bunch of accounts. Well, that just creates complexity. It's not just about managing your money and having more going to where you want it to go. But if it's hard, you're not going to do it. So we want it as simple and fast and easy as possible. And we've all heard about the envelope system. If you use a simple software product, you've allocated it to a particular area like your emergency fund. So it doesn't matter where it is. It can be in a higher yield savings account. It can even be in preferred stocks that are very safe that you could liquidate within a day or two. So no, I would definitely go the simplest method possible. And in fact, a lot of clients, I'm having them close multiple accounts just because they have them all over the place.
So let me ask you this. Is it, I guess maybe would you say it's a combination of discipline and structure? Maybe not as complex a structure, but is that the number one, or is it just awareness?
It's behavior change. Instead of operating how we have and expecting different results, which is I go out and I spend money and I move on with my life. And this, by the way, is a very simple behavior change, but that doesn't mean people don't struggle with it. And it is spend money, spend 10 to 20 seconds, enter it into an app, and then move on with your life. You know exactly what you spent, you know what you spent it for. You're often filling your gas tank or standing in line It takes 10 to 20 seconds. You don't have to go add up a bunch of receipts at the end of the day and enter them into a program or a spreadsheet. So it's building the habit of paying attention to where your money is going, and you can see how much you have left in that particular category. So on the 28th of the month, when you're tired and your spouse is tired, and you want to go out to dinner and you realize you have $9.88 left in your entertainment fund, you can still go out to dinner, but you might have to pull it from somewhere else, like your personal spending or vacation or Christmas or home maintenance or taxes. No, probably not. Whatever you want. It's your money.
Well, speaking of paying the bills, so to speak, we're going to have to pay the bills right now. We're going to take a short break to hear from today's spotlight sponsor. And when we come back with Doug Peterson for our Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to talk about Wedding Bell Blues. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank.
Sandler Training specializes ongoing training, coaching, and consulting to help companies increase their top and bottom line results. As the business owner or leader, are you completely frustrated with lack of consistent performance from your salespeople? Concerned the team is not putting enough strong opportunities in the pipeline? Disappointed at your team's inability to create value instead of selling on price? Or fed up with losing valuable margin due to unnecessary price discounting? If the end result of these and other challenges is a roller coaster ride of performance, consistently missed sales forecasts, or stagnant business growth, Sandler may be a fit for you. Sandler works with sales leaders and their sales team to refine their selling process, put key management processes in place, and improve execution to create sustained, improved performance and results. Check us out at www.toptier.sandler.com.
All right, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business leaders in the Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm James Albertson, your co-host, and our guest today is Doug Peterson with Get Priorities Straight. And now we're going to move to our next segment, Hot or Not.
And Hot or Not, Doug, is where we are going to pepper you with questions about probably some money, some finances, maybe some other fun things. And you get to tell us whether that's hot or not, why or why not. And at the end, you get to bank nothing. So this is all helping us. So listen, you didn't mention that you also officiate weddings, and I think I've seen and doing with our crack staff looking in on you, you've done quite a few weddings. But let me ask you this then, hot or not, pre-wedding couples seminar on finances.
Yeah, that would be a great program. I do interviews with my clients, and I've had several people say that they wish they had this before they got married, so that they just didn't go through the inevitable challenges. So I'd say that's definitely a hot topic. It's something I'm going to be building into my programs. And for newlyweds, often they don't have a lot of money. So I've got to figure out a way to make it very cost effective where they'll get the value. But
sure,
absolutely really important. I think it's 62% of marriages fail around money issues.
All right, Doug. Well, my question, I'll stick with the marriage aspect of things. Hot or not, separate bank accounts?
First of all, I mentioned earlier that bank accounts don't matter. What matters is, are we working together as a team? Are we working at cross purposes? I really feel strongly that if you want to get married and have a partnership, that you should work together. None of us is as smart as all of us. The spender will be tempered by the saver. The saver will be tempered and maybe have more fun with the spender. But work together on goals. There's no point in having us separate when we decided to be together. So I assume I'm answering it correctly when I say that's a hot topic. It's definitely something that you should decide do you really want to be in partnership and really reach more of your objectives and goals in life as a married couple together than trying to do them both separately and not pulling the wagon from the same end.
All right, Doug, how about this hot or not? Hot or not? Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey, hot or not? Dave Ramsey is great for broke people. I have had people come and said, I've been through Dave Ramsey's rice and beans and rice program, and we got out of debt. Now what? What do I do? They had no real good roadmap before to figure out, how do people live with money, having 20,000 in their bank account and still operate? So he also talks about credit cards and don't use credit. Well, I use credit to leverage miles. I've got 1.2 million airline miles. That'll get me to Australia round trip 12 times with one trip left over. So he's good at marketing. He's good at fundamentals. I'd recommend his course to anybody that hasn't done anything to learn a little about insurance and investing. But if you really want to master your cash flow, you need to take a very proactive stance. And part of what I do is build the program for people so they don't have to start from scratch, and then teach them how to manage it. So I'm going to give them a nod.
All right. Next one. Hot or not? Giving children allowances.
By the way, did I say Ramsey has a good looking haircut, kind of like you do, James? He's a handsome man like you are, James.
I appreciate
So
that.
giving people an allowance, giving kids an allowance. I think you can start kids about 8 years old managing their money. And personally, having raised 3 kids and having a couple of the grandkids, and it'd be great if we could start over, even though we don't want to, and do what we've learned. Is there's a certain amount of things you need to do in a household just to be part of the household. And I think that's fine to also give them allowance. But from then on, start teaching them that effort gets rewards. So give them an allowance for things that they can't do for themselves, but for things that they can do for themselves, let them earn them and have them actually track and manage their money. One of the biggest gifts I think you can give kids is to have them learn a giving habit very early on in life and a savings habit very early on in life, so that they will actually have something. We know the miracle of compound interest. If you do what I didn't do, you'd be able to live like I can't live, because it just starts really early and it makes a huge difference. But I think getting kids involved in your finances and helping them understand where money's going and what it costs to live is critical.
I think, but Dan, real quick before you say that, I want to key in on one thing. I think that getting kids to save and actually putting kind of a rule when they get their first job. Our daughters got the job, you have to save 20% of your paycheck. Yeah. It's got to go to savings, period. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Got to get them into the habit. I think a lot of parents may be afraid to do that, to put that control over the money, but in the end, I think it's a good thing. What about you?
Well, absolutely. And one of the things Ramsey does very well is he talks about giving every dollar a job. So savings is this amorphous pile of money. So give it a job. This is your long-term future. You never touch it. That's 10%. Here's 5%. This is for you to save money for stuff you really want. Here's 5%. This is here for you to give. Save money to give. When you find a cause that's important or someone that needs help, you can give it away. Well, now they have a job. I know where the boundaries are and the guidelines are. And we do so much better, both as adults, and I've learned this in coaching and mentoring, and with kids, when things are clear and black and white instead of shades of gray.
So I'm curious what the pandemic has done to people's spending habits. Let me explain, and then I want to hear your viewpoint. Over the course of when the pandemic was at its height, I'd think, well, there's not a lot of mochas being bought. People buy, people going out and buying kind of the high-priced coffees, which I certainly have been prone to do when you go on coffee meetings and not going out on lunches and some of those things that maybe we just weren't available. And then I'm wondering, well, Amazon's probably doing really well. There's a lot of stuff. How did the pandemic affect people's spending in regard to budgets and to personal finance mindset?
Well, that's hard to answer from a general standpoint. I would first say that people's going out money moved into home improvement money. The people that spent money just on lawn care and fixing up their houses. And, I built a little outdoor area underneath my deck I call the Moonbeam Lounge, with heaters and portable hot tub. And we would have never built an outside heated area in the Northwest without the pandemic hitting. So it's changed a lot of our behaviors. But I think we're also seeing that people are, as soon as they have some freedom, have a pent up desire. Spending right now, savings was higher, and now it's personal spending is much higher because people are celebrating. I think it's funny that I never learned the Roaring '20s was followed by a pandemic in
right.
1918. No wonder everybody went crazy. They were all locked up, and in that pandemic, people died, within hours of getting the Spanish flu. So I just think, it's just a pendulum. People swing back and forth. And I think the biggest thing that I hope people got out of this is to realize it's not always going to be the same. And you don't have to be fearful. But if you build a margin in your finances, you can sleep really well at night.
Amen to that. So hot or not, let me come back to this. Buying stock for your children, let's say for graduation gifts, getting them involved in the stock market early.
Well, like I said, I'm not a financial planner or investor.
No.
So that's really not an area where I give anybody any advice at all. I think that however you choose to save, whether it's index funds or stocks or even just cash, there's nothing wrong with having cash that won't go down. The cost of living does continue to increase, but you don't put your emergency fund in highly volatile stocks. Again, I'm not trying to give stock advice,
right?
But if you have $10,000 in your emergency fund and you really need it, and you hit it on the same day that there was a 30% or 20% drop, you've got less. Yeah. So, but hey, teaching kids the way of the world in finance, I guess I would say be conservative, take 10%, but not much more than that. Just, give them let them taste it, let them play.
Okay.
Then take them to Gamblers Anonymous after they love it.
Not a market fan, it sounds like. Okay, what about the casino?
No, the market it's just not my area. I'm more like a pre-wealth manager.
Yeah.
You can't really go to a financial advisor unless you have something to invest. And so many people, for people that are making over $150,000 a year nationally, over 25% of them don't have an emergency fund. Between 100 and 150,000 in take home in personal income, less than 35% of them don't have an emergency fund. It's just, we have been really sold to enjoy now.
So Doug, you
pay for it later.
Doug, actually, it's funny you segued into what my question was, because, we're talking about people, again, you're talking about, you used 150,000 a year. You're talking about people who are successful and are making really good money and struggling with that. And then you talked about the society we live in. And when I think about, when you think about the marketing, you talked about that with Dave Ramsey, you think about marketing as a whole, and you think even from a governmental standpoint, they want us to spend, right? They want us to spend. There's taxes involved in that, all of that. We really live in a society more than ever because of technology and TV and all of that really is encouraging us to spend now. So I wanted to tee off on that a little bit off of that. Can you speak, before we go to commercial, can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, I would say anybody that can print their own money should spend a lot, kind of like the government does. That's going to be my whole political campaign here. You can't spend money you don't have. And if the government wants people to be solid, they're not going to be going bankrupt. They're going to be fiscally responsible. So I would say, sure, spend, but spend within your means. The secret to becoming wealthy is living within your means for a very long time. And you will become wealthy if you save some and have compound interest. Then you can be like James, who's been saving for a long time.
You know what? Some people call me cheap. My friends call me cheap, but hey, I'll take that. If I
Let's
have
just say
money in the bank.
frugal. How about frugal? Well,
That's
you know,
what I say.
but what we are not frugal with is taking a break when we have to, and we've got to take that break right now. So when we're going to take that short break to hear from our sponsors, our corporate sponsors. But when we come back with our guest, Doug Peterson, for our famous Plead the Fifth section of the show, we're going to do something to find out what might be shocking about Doug. You won't want to miss it. Don't walk away. We will be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank.
Plead the Fifth is brought to you by our corporate sponsors: Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, and the Kitsap Sun newspaper. Please visit our website at www.shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. Now back to the show.
All right. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area and beyond. I'm James Albertson. Our guest today is Doug Peterson from Get Priorities Straight. And our next segment is Plead the Fifth.
So you may need to contact an attorney. You never know, but maybe you'll answer all of our questions, Doug. We're going to turn up the heat, ask you some more fun questions. You get to plead the fifth once, but only once. After that, the gloves come off. So, and again, at the end, you win nothing to put into the bank. I mentioned something about shock and awe, maybe. Plead the fifth, Doug. Tell us something about yourself that most people, even your friends, don't know that might shock them to learn about you.
Everybody's trying to put their best foot forward in business and look good. I mean, it's just kind of human nature. And most people don't know that in the 8 businesses I've had, 2 of them have failed. And at one point I'd used my house as collateral for a business loan. I had to quit claim my house. I had to voluntarily repo my car, and I had to go claim bankruptcy. I had dug myself a huge, huge hole. And I say that because people need to know that just about everybody has had some challenges. It may not always be financial, but my favorite quote is, champions are rarely chosen for the ranks of the unscarred. We can learn a lot from our challenges.
All right, Doug, how about this question? And once again, you can plead the fifth. Feel free not to answer it, but I think you will. If you had a chance to go back 10 years, what advice would you give that previously in the past 10-year past self, I guess?
Well, actually, I wish I had found this avenue sooner, because this has been such a transformative business, both in business results and personal results. Now, if I could go back, it's doing coaching and mentoring is kind of amorphous. It's helping people reduce or eliminate some issue or challenge so that they're in a more resourceful state so they can do more of what they do well. Well, this particular issue or challenge around finances is so common that it lifts a weight from people, and they find that they have a little more energy to focus on what's really important. And I like to say that Get Priorities Straight, GPS, stands for greatest personal strength as well. So the more that we can focus on our greatest strength, the better. And by doing this business, I've been able to focus on my strengths, which I really feel is relating to people and coming beside them and getting results.
Very good, very good. Now we're gonna switch away from this a little bit because we're gonna go back to your officiating of weddings, Doug. How many have you done? Before I ask my question, how many have you done?
Next Friday will be 14, and 15 is scheduled in October.
Okay, so obviously names held to withheld here, of course, but there's got to be a crazy wedding story in there. Plead the fifth. What's the craziest thing that you've seen happen at a wedding that you've officiated?
Oh, man. Boy, and we're live, right? you're not going to edit this out. So, because after the wedding, a lot of things happen.
Okay.
Boy, it hasn't been that crazy. I think, the most difficulty I had was when the bride and groom were both talking to each other while I was sharing their story.
Oh,
And they kept laughing and joking, and I couldn't stay on script, and literally brought them up. The other thing that is another discussion, which will probably limit my officiating in the future, is 3 times I've forgotten to tell everybody to sit down. So they're all still standing there about 10 minutes later, wondering why they're still standing up. I learned, I do know when the mother of the bride sits down, everybody sits down, but I'm supposed to watch that, and I wasn't very good at it.
Sounds like you had some very obedient wedding audiences if nobody sat down for a while.
It was prior to the reception, so they're more obedient.
So if you had a chance, no, something different here. Tell us something about yourself that most people don't know and will be shocked to know.
Besides being best beginner in ski school in 7th grade, I suppose that one's off the table. I've had 8 companies, and I have changed industries every time. And I think, definitely the people listening here, one of those businesses was balloon vending. I brought those silver Mylar balloons into the area when they very first came out, ran the Bellevue art fairs, and made a lot of money, and thought, because I grew up in Bellevue, that every community was like Bellevue. Well, they're not. Then I failed miserably with that little endeavor. But I think my biggest accomplishment that a lot of people don't know is I've been with my wife for 39 years, only 1 separation, which everybody gets the hiccups. I think I'm doing pretty darn well.
Pretty good.
there you go. This is a question, Doug, we've been asking everybody for this year, so you're no exception. We're going to make you start another business, but this one's going to be based on a hobby. If we said, Doug, you got to start a new business, what hobby would you base that new business off of?
Well, I suppose I wasn't going to go public like this, but I sing karaoke.
Oh, yeah.
So the Moonbeam Lounge, which is under my deck, is already an illegal karaoke bar. So I guess I would have to take it legit. And you're both invited.
All right.
And it's a lot of fun.
James,
have big enough speakers for a gymnasium.
I gotta ask a follow-up question. That can't go. What is, and this is, I guess, a good plead the fifth. What is the song for you? What is the song that you belt out the very best? Your spotlight song.
Yeah, in the trade we call them the signature song.
There you go.
Yeah. It's going to date me a little bit, but I've always enjoyed Bobby Darin's Mac the Knife.
Oh, yeah.
But Stray Cat Strut's one of my favorites. Crazy Little Thing Called Love. I got a string of them. You'll just have to come to the Moonbeam if you want to hear more.
We're going to have to get it, James. We're going to have to get his greatest hits.
Yeah, apparently so. So one of the questions I always ask guests as well, simply because I did a lot of it during the height of the pandemic stage. What show or shows do you binge watch? And of course, you can plead the fifth.
We watch series, but I don't like to binge watch. It's just too much time sitting watching somebody else live. So if you ask my wife, she said I was a Trekkie and have watched a lot of Star Trek over our lifetime together. So I do like some science fiction, but TV is something I want to do less of.
All right. So let's talk about something you want to do more of. And it really kind of goes back to what we've been talking today about your practice. Somebody listening to this says, okay, you know what? I'm really interested in learning more and getting started. Certainly they need to contact you. But aside from that, what is usually step number 1 and maybe step number 1B after that to getting started down this process?
Well, I offer a free get acquainted meeting, and that's just usually a 40-minute meeting where I talk If you're married, to both people, and if you're single, just you, of course, and just get an idea of what you want and what your situation is. So often people aren't even struggling. They just are making really good money, but didn't set aside money for something, or, have some other goals. So just to get acquainted, meaning to understand what they're doing. And if they're interested, I move into a discovery process where we go a little more in depth and really begin to get clear on what your goals and objectives are and what we could accomplish over the next 10 weeks if you decided to use the program.
So, Doug, let me ask a question. I'm sure a lot of people watching or listening are thinking, do I need to do that? And some people, say, well, hey, I'm pretty good. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. I'm curious, what's probably the hardest thing that people find out that they aren't doing that they need to do? What's the hardest thing to start and stay with when it comes to, the clients that you've worked with?
There's a cycle of change that I've used where you have unconscious optimism, and then that moves into unconscious pessimism, and then it moves into the valley of despair. So one of the things people don't, and then by the way, it moves into conscious optimism and then success. The biggest problem people have is they really don't want to look at it, and they don't feel like they can get ahead, and denial has been working for them so far. But it really takes looking at where you've already committed all your money and knowing that, just like time management, if you listed everything you have to do in a day, there's not much left. And so I think the biggest resistance people have is just being willing to talk to someone in I'll call it a jugular topic, that, hey, I'm a smart person. I'm a personal injury attorney. I'm a commercial realtor. I should know all this stuff. But we've never been trained.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever took a cash flow course. Most people, they project. They don't actually teach people how to manage money. And the way you manage money is decide, how much do I have left? Not what was the arbitrary projection that I'm not hitting.
Right, right. Fair enough. Well, I think we're coming down to the end of the show here. And Doug, I want to thank you for being our guest. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who want to know more. For those who do want to know more, how do they go about, what's the best way they go about of finding more information, getting in touch with you?
Well, the best way to get in touch with me is just go to schedulewithdoug.com, and that'll take you right to my calendar, and we can just have a conversation. If you want to go to my website, it's getprioritystraight.com, but that's harder to spell. So just schedule with Doug. We'll get you there and we can have a conversation.
Sounds good. Well, for everybody out there, make sure to check out the replays on shrimptank.com. shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. And you can catch us on almost all of the podcast venues out there, platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, you name them, many I don't know about. And you can also catch us on our Facebook page, our YouTube page, and our Instagram page.
Well, Doug, thank you very much for being our guest. James, thanks for being here. You're actually going to be back with me next week. So listen, for the live stream, you got to be on Facebook to catch the live stream. Our next show will be a week from today, Wednesday, August 11th. And our guest is going to be Jordan Babineau. And if that name sounds familiar, Jordan is a former Seattle Seahawks safety, played in the first Super Bowl with them. He's also an author of a new book called Pivot to Win. He's a TV radio personality, and he's also a business owner of Assured Ride non-emergency medical transportation company. So Jordan has been busy off the field as well. So please come back noon Pacific time on August 11th on our Facebook page to watch that live stream with James and me. But in the meantime, please be safe, be well. And I think Doug will agree, be prosperous, because until next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond, and the